Hello, welcome to our session, Factors of Inequity. I'm Georgia Evans, Clinical Assistant Professor at the University of West Georgia. And as I go through our presentation, I hope you'll consider if these factors are true for your state. Our topics for today will be the common factors influencing teacher inequity. We have known for years through the research of Hattie, Strong, Sanders, and others that teachers are the most important factor in student learning. Thus, we need to consider the decrease in teacher preparation enrollment, our geographic location of schools, and our low socioeconomic regions, and how that influences effective teachers, and then teacher attrition. When we consider how the inequities in our educational field have influenced students, we have to understand that 1/6 of all students attending public schools are in districts where the average test score is at least one grade level behind the national average. We can consider our most affluent districts and our least affluent districts, and we will find that the grade level achievement is 4 years apart between those two districts. When we look at a district, if we look at our Black students, they may be up to 2 grade levels behind and lower than our white students in that very same district. And our Hispanic students may be 1.5 years behind. Stanford University tells us that class size, per capita income and spending, and charter school enrollment does not influence these statistics. This is nothing new. We've known for years that we had achievement gaps and that we had subgroups of students that were not as effectively served as others. Hanover tells us that despite our best efforts, we still have students of color, low income, English learners, disabilities, as well as our homeless and foster care students that continue to be more likely to fail math and reading and are less likely to graduate. Once again, this is not new, but maybe we've focused on the wrong thing. For years, educators focused on equality, treating all students the same. But all students don't need the same. So we've got to turn our focus to equity, which is ensuring all students have the resources they need to graduate. And those resources will be different for each student. Understanding that student access to high effective teachers and high quality teachers is the most critical way to closing the gap means that we have to consider those factors that influence and prevent our students from having those high quality teachers. They are low enrollment and a drop in enrollment in teacher prep programs. And this is especially true for our teachers of color. This involves not only geographic, but also socioeconomic inequities that you find across and within states. And then, of course, teacher attrition continues to be a factor in us losing our very best. When we think about factor one, low enrollment in teacher prep programs, we know that since 2015, we have had a drop of about 35% nationwide entering the teaching profession and dropping in their teacher prep enrollment. We know that some states have seen a decline as much as 50% in their enrollment. It's real easy to see that when we lose 300,000 teachers potential teachers, people who would have enrolled in teacher prep programs, that we will have an impact on our schools. In the state of Georgia, which is where my university is located, in 2018, we compared and collected data on teacher production by the actual certification levels and teacher need by certification levels. We produced a little less than 6,000 teachers, but we needed over 18,000 teachers. Some areas such as ELA, math, and special education have been hit the hardest by a drop in our enrollment in teacher prep. We've said that we've seen a significant drop in the enrollment of teachers of color. For our Black and Latino students, we've seen a drop in program enrollment of 25%. To include that 25% in the drop of enrollment means our students have less exposure to teachers of color. Yet when students of color have teachers of color, they experience higher expectations, more referrals to gifted, and less referrals to special ed. Our students become more successful, are in school more frequently, and have less discipline issues. And they are more successful academically and more likely to graduate. Why is this an issue? We have over 80% of our teachers nationwide that are white. That demographic does not represent the demographics of our school. Geographic inequities is another concern because effective teachers are not distributed equally across all regions of our nation. We know that poor children and children of color are disproportionately assigned to teachers who have less preparation, less experience, weaker academic backgrounds. We know that certain regions of our state struggle to attract teachers. And not only do they struggle to attract teachers, but the teachers they do attract are less experienced, have less certification options available to them, and frequently do not stay. In looking at two states, Georgia and Oregon, I want you to consider these geographic inequities. Follow the interstate systems. If you look at Georgia, you'll notice there's a huge area in the southwest part of the state where very limited travel is available. You've got travel, they're just back roads. The same is true with Oregon when you consider the central and their southeastern part of the state. What we'll find is that where you have less interstate, you have less industry, you have less jobs, you have less options, thus you have lower tax revenues, a harder time attracting teachers, and you have a hard time keeping those teachers. Geographic inequities is basically intertwined with socioeconomic inequities. And what we know is that in communities where there are higher free and reduced lunch populations and more minority demographics, they struggle to attract and keep teachers. In these same communities, quite often there are other community concerns. You have food, job, health care, and housing issues that have to be solved. You have lower tax revenues, thus you have frequently smaller salaries for teachers. and additional shortages related to resources. It's a vicious cycle. In low-income schools, you have teachers that leave once they have some experience to go to districts where they can get better pay, better resources, and serve more affluent students. Their vacancies are filled with less experienced teachers who stay for a few years, gain experience, learn how to teach children, and then leave to go to our better funded districts. And the cycle continues. When we look at the same two states of Oregon and Georgia, and we consider our regions of each state below the poverty level, look to your red and orange areas. You'll find a great deal of similarity as to where those interstates and geographic inequities occurred. The final area, teacher attrition. This has continued for years, and it is not improved. About a third of our teachers leave due to retirement, but over half of our teachers leave due to dissatisfaction. In our schools of poverty, our teachers leave at a higher rate, thus influencing and impacting the availability of effective teachers for our students. Why do they leave? What are their areas of dissatisfaction? Everything from mandated tests up to not being prepared for the profession. And you'll see that these are the areas that if we are going to make a difference in teacher attrition, we have to address and find solutions. But there are other implications. Those other implications are this has to be something that becomes a policy priority, and change has to occur at the federal, state, and local level. We have to continue to try to influence our people and groups that can have an influence on our politicians, on our boards of ed, and on our community. And regardless of what we do, we have to consider what teachers and students know and can tell us about solutions and the reforms needed. At the local level, a district that wants to address inequities needs to consider the following. Look at the data. Use that data to help tell your story. Analyze where are the inequities within your district and your schools. Research and implement those best practices that will begin to lead to equitable education. Develop leaders with the skills, understanding, and strategies to create schools that are equitable schools. Provide professional learning to your staff on not only equity, but culturally responsive classrooms and environments. Continue to put your best efforts forward to recruit and retain our staff members and our effective teachers, both of diversity and of those that have the skills to serve our students. Partner with those teacher prep programs to ensure that the candidates produced in these programs have a thorough understanding of equity in our classrooms. Here are the references that support this presentation. And as we move forward, I challenge you to consider not only, as our first picture depicts, equality, but true equity as seen in our final picture. It takes all of us. Thank you for your attention and participation.